My name is Jan Dillard, and I'm the coordinator for the Wesleyan Covenant Association's Congregational Renewal Initiative. This project we are working on today is tagged Revive. And by participating, we hope to help you and your church and your family and your friends to do just that. After the chaos in the Methodist Church, we hope that we can help you to revive in Christ. We're here today to be a ready resource through the expertise of our consultants and the resources they each bring to the table to help you renew and revitalize and perhaps even restructure your faith walk in the traditional path. We WCA members have been working for several years now to help birth the global Methodist Church. And that is happening, praise God, as we speak. And it's happening with a lot of help from folks like Mr. Jonathan Bailie, who is here today with us from the National Center for Life and Liberty. We had hoped Mr. Gibbs would be with us from the same firm. He is otherwise detained today. So would you tell him we missed him today, Jonathan?
Will do.
The NCLL states their mission as serving to protect and defend the Bible-based values upon which our nation was founded, endeavoring to protect and defend those important foundational areas that support our freedoms, life values, constitutional values, church liberty, Christian education, and homeschool education. And they've walked alongside many churches who have chosen to exit the UMC under paragraph 2553. Now we have a different circumstance, and we thought it would be helpful if Mr. Bailie could spend some time with us today, just giving us the general topic of what to do next in terms of where do you put your foot? How do you make the decisions? Where do you go next? So we believe that you're going to find this very helpful. You may find that you are not on the screen, you're not in the gallery, but you can hear. If you have questions, keep a series of notes and write your questions down, and we'll give you a way to talk to the NCLL afterwards when we're finished here. Mr. Gibbs is the president and general counsel. I'm sorry, Mr. Bailie. We're going to go with Mr. Bailie now. He's CFO and COO. His role at NCLL involves creating and implementing the initiatives needed to maximize the ministry's effectiveness and expand its reach, stemming from his desire to help the churches the NCLL serves reach their communities for Christ. You guys are all on the same page. Who doesn't want to do that? So I'm going to say a little prayer to get you started this morning, and then this afternoon, and then Mr. Bailie, I'll hand it over, okay? Let's pray. Let's pray together. Gracious and merciful God, we are here in the midst of sometimes outright chaos as we try to be faithful Methodists in your name. And we have asked several people who really know the best way to remain in our faithful traditional path to come, and they have. And wow, this afternoon we have a servant of yours. And so we ask that you bless him, that you guide his words, that all of our words might be acceptable in your sight, and that we might be able to gain guidance to follow your will and to become a part of the new church that's coming about, and in the new efforts that we've made to renew and remission, retool, refit, whatever it takes to serve well in your name. These things we bring to your throne, and we ask that you be with us as we speak today. And we ask this in humbleness and in love for you. These things we are bold to ask in your precious name. Mr. Bailie?
Amen. Well, it's great to talk with all of you. My name is Jonathan Bailie. I'm with the National Center for Life and Liberty. National Center for Life and Liberty is a 501c3 religious organization, law firm that really focuses on trying to assist churches and religious charities in having what we call maximum ministry with minimum liability. And the reason that David Gibbs III founded the NCLL is he wanted to give access to affordable legal assistance to everyday churches. A lot of churches would choose not to get legal advice because it'd be $250 or $500 an hour, and it would cost more than they thought that they could handle to get a contract signed or a document put together. And so David Gibbs in the 2011-2012 timeframe founded the NCLL. He worked with another firm that specifically served churches for about 2 decades prior to that. And in 2011-2012, post the Terry Schiavo case, he founded the NCLL. And that was probably one of the more well-known cases that he had handled up to that point. Some of you may or may not know that case, but it was a lady in Florida who was deprived of food and nourishment, specifically by the courts, in a fight over whether or not her life should be continued based on her quality of life that was there at the moment. So large case, national attention, went to the Supreme Court multiple times in a short window of time. And so post that case and wanting to see more people have access to affordable legal assistance, he founded the NCLL. So we've been doing this now for 12 years here at the NCLL, and we have a strong team that are all committed individuals in doing just that. A couple of years ago, the NCLL thought through the disaffiliation process with members that were members of the WCA and leadership of the WCA at that time. And we're trying to figure out, how do we help churches take advantage of this small window? For those of you who may know or may not know, the 2553 paragraph was initially put together for those who were going to be on the liberal side of the conversation. 2019 conference, the paragraph was put into place and the traditional plan was affirmed. And so the United Methodist Church was supposed to be following the traditional plan, and the paragraph was put in place for churches as they went forward into a different mindset, the liberal progressive mindset at that point. It became clear the bishops were not going to allow the conferences to follow the traditional plan. And so as things began to shift, as many of you probably know better than I do, the WCA and then subsequently the founding of the Global Methodist Church occurred, and a protocol was worked on to be put into place so that churches could transfer to the Global Methodist Church under paragraph 2548.2. Our firm started working with several of the leadership of the WCA, and we're looking at a group of churches that were going to want to leave under this protocol if it got put into place. Well, as we all know, the General Conference got pushed out several years. The protocol was basically moved away from in its entirety from the bishops. And at that point, all the conferences, WCA chapters, began encouraging and trying to help churches pursue paragraph 2553 for their individual churches. And now the paragraph is being utilized by the conservative churches, and so many of the traditionalists. And so we started working with conference by conference to help churches pursue disaffiliation. We helped a little over 2,500 churches through the disaffiliation process. A little over 2,000 go through the 2553 process specifically, working with churches in all different conferences, ranging from the Florida Conference to the Mountain Sky Conference, Eastern Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, Susquehanna, Pendle, Baltimore, Washington, North Carolina, Western North Carolina. The numbers just go on. Over 51 conferences, we assisted at least a single church, and many conferences, we assisted a large group of churches going through the process. And again, providing that affordable legal assistance as they went through the process. Well, as many of you know, 2553 ended at the end of last year. The General Conference even wanted to put a bit of an exclamation point on it by removing the 2553 paragraph from subsequent editions of the Book of Discipline, so that the word disaffiliation and that paragraph would not show up in the Book of Discipline, which is a little bit of a statement versus an actual binding legal effect. But it was something the General Conference did, which many of you have called and asked our office about. Regardless, 2553 expired at the end of last year, and we are now in a world where 2553 doesn't exist. The General Conference has made changes, as all of you know, to the Book of Discipline, some of which that still have to be ratified through the annual conferences, some of which that went into effect. And now churches are saying, what do we do? How do we proceed forward? Our firm has also been involved in litigation in multiple conferences specifically in conferences across the country that did not have equitable paragraph 2553 terms. So we are currently engaged in litigation in the Baltimore-Washington Conference, which was assessing a 50% property penalty. We are engaged in the Eastern Pennsylvania Conference, the New Jersey Conference, Hawaii, which is the California Pacific Conference, California. We are also working with litigation in the Alabama West Florida Conference, as 50 churches got kicked out of the 2553 process. And so those churches are still trying to find a way to go forward. We were able to finish the litigation in North Georgia. We're able to see a victory there with over 200 churches able to disaffiliate through the win in North Georgia. Western North Carolina, that litigation got settled with the group being able to get out through the Western North Carolina Conference. And then we have individual lawsuits in a number of different conferences that we're assisting with. So at this point, we're actively engaged in litigation. 2553 is done, and we are currently helping some churches go through the paragraph 2549 process. So that's a little bit about who we are, what we do. And what I want to talk to you a little bit about is, what does it look like now for your church? And so what I will tell you is that as we go into this section, I'm going to be broad. I'm not going to give specific legal advice to your church. A couple of things. Number one is every conference is different. And each conference has a different set of parameters and a different set of issues that we deal with in each conference. The litigation in Maryland is different than the litigation in New Jersey, which is different than the litigation in Pennsylvania. So every conference is different. Number two, every state is different. The laws in each state are different, and the strength of the trust clause or the weakness of the trust clause is different in each state. Many of you have listened to some of the lectures through the WCA and the Good News Group about whether it's a neutral principles jurisdiction or a deference jurisdiction. Underneath of a case, the Jones case in the Supreme Court gave every state the ability to have a deference position towards denominational ownership of property, or a neutral principles perspective regarding denominational ownership of property. And so whether your state is a neutral principle state or a deference state makes a difference. And so from our perspective, each conference is different, each state is different, and we also don't want to get into specific legal advice regarding what you should do on the steps and how to pursue them, because there are a lot of churches that are seeking that legal advice and utilizing that advice and are ending up in litigation with the conference. And so because this is a public link and it is being shared out, we are not going to get into very specific issues in regards to how to put your church in a position for different litigation and different legal issues. So I wanted to let everybody know that the advice is going to be somewhat general at this point. And if you would want to get specific advice, we are offering a free consultation through our office for any church that wants to get that advice. And so you can contact our office. I'm going to put that information here in the chat here in a few minutes, but you will contact our office and request an evaluation for your church's specific situation. So we can talk about your conference. We can look at your specific set of facts and scenario about where your church is at in the process, and then look to see what the best options for your church is to pursue going forward. But in a general sense, right now, there's really 4 options that churches have as a part of this process. Number one option is paragraph 2549, an agreement to separate under paragraph 2549. 2549 is a church closure paragraph, as many of you know, and it has been the paragraph that has been used for a long time for churches that are leaving the denomination and are purchasing or buying their assets and transferring to another denomination or entity. Each conference has used this paragraph differently. But for instance, the South Carolina Conference did not allow any churches to leave under paragraph 2553, and instead did 2 rounds of disaffiliation. The one round, which is just now finishing, under paragraph 2549 with an agreement to separate. And so this paragraph 2549, agreement to separate, process was very much modeled off of the 2553 process, but it was the church closure process under 2549. So South Carolina used that paragraph exclusively for all of the processes that they had in South Carolina. Other conferences, since 2553 has ended, have been allowing paragraph 2549 disaffiliations. The Holston Conference has said they're going to allow paragraph 2549 disaffiliations. Alabama West Florida Conference had said they were going to, only if the general conference changes impacted the book of discipline for the churches in the Alabama West Florida Conference. They have since said that they have determined that the general conference changes did not trigger the terms and conditions, and they are not going to allow a paragraph 2549 agreement to separate. South Georgia, on the other hand, has said they're going to do that. So every conference has been different. There have been some conferences outside of the 2553 process, like West Virginia and New England, that have allowed paragraph 2549 agreements to separate. So it really depends on what conference you're in, whether or not there's going to be a paragraph 2549 separation option for your church. But that's the first option. We highly recommend for you to talk to your district superintendent, find out if your conference is going to allow a paragraph 2549 separation. If your conference is going to allow it, are there terms and conditions that have already been put together, or is this something that's going to be negotiated individually? And start to understand if that process is going to be an option for you. And again, we welcome you to call our office, have a conversation with us, even before you speak to your DS, if you'd like for us to have a conversation with you about what that would look like. Our office is willing to do that. So paragraph 2549, agreement to separate being the first option. The second option is you can sue the conference. You can say, I want to sue in order to get access or own my own property. Every state, that analysis is going to look different. Every state that how that's going to play out is going to look different. Is there a Supreme Court ruling in your state? Is there the trust clause in your deeds? Are there harms that the conference has done to your church? It's going to be an analysis. We bring a much broader lawsuit. Typically, you can see our complaints in the Maryland and Pennsylvania and New Jersey litigation. We bring a much larger lawsuit than just a single complaint. A single count in regards to the trust clause and the deed, but there has to be individual claims and facts that would give us the ability to bring those claims in regards to your church. So the second option would be a plaintiff action. The third option would be what a lot of people call the bolt and run, where you just take your property and you leave the United Methodist Church with your property. There are several churches that have done this across the U.S., some with different levels of success. The bolt and run is when you believe that you own your property. You have title to your property. There's no trust clause in your deeds. Your corporation does not have any reference to the book of discipline. You don't believe that the book of discipline, the trust clause, are binding over your property and over your entity. There's an analysis to that, which I'm not going to get into for this call since it's recorded. There's also a level of risk assessment that your church needs to go through to determine whether or not this is the right decision for you and whether this option is in your church's best interest. And again, there's a bit of analysis to that based on what conference you're in, based on what harms or facts give rise to those issues in your conference, to your church, and what state you're in and what the laws are and the Supreme Court decisions in your state. So that would be a church by church analysis that we can do. So then the last option is to walk away and go plant a different church and to leave the property and abandon the property and just allow the United Methodist Church to take the property back over. In some instances, when there's debt or issues where there is a significant amount of deferred maintenance or debt that is a part of that property, and the church says it doesn't make sense for us to do things that would to gain that property back or to spend money to get that property. We should just leave and abandon it, and we can go plant another church and pursue a different option. And there have been churches across the country that have chosen to do that. A couple of conferences, the conference said there was going to be a multi-million-dollar property assessment, and the church decided that it made more sense for them to pursue it in that regard versus going through the process of paying the money and separating through 2553 or now under 2549. So you think about those four. The first option is the agreement to separate under paragraph 2549. The plaintiff action, the defendant action, which is the bolt and run, taking your property and leaving and allowing them to sue you. And then the last option being to abandon the property and to plant a startup church and to just let that property go. A lot of churches, when they start trying to think about what these options are, they have to start kind of doing the analysis of what makes sense for their church individually. And so what we recommend for sure is for everybody to say, where is my church at? What does my church want to do? And get an understanding about where your church is at. And so a lot of times, churches that contact us, especially now when there's no formal process in place, we recommend doing a town hall type meeting where you inform the congregation of what has been occurring underneath of the general conference changes and things that are happening in your conference. Some of you have already been through annual conference. Some of you guys are getting ready to go through annual conference. And some of those annual conference have significant changes that they're planning that coincides with what occurred at general conference. So informing your church through a town hall methodology, helping them understand what's going on in the situation with the United Methodist Church General Conference and your annual conference, and then helping them understand what challenges or things that your church is going to be looking at. And if your church body says, you know what, this is no longer a fit for us. This United Methodist Church is no longer a place where our church is going to thrive. Then the question is, do you need to get some sort of straw poll or understanding of where your church is at? Or do you need to, or do you not need to? Some of you have 50, 30, 20 people in attendance, and you say, we all know, we all sat in a room, talked about it, we're all on the same page. Some of you have 70, 80, 100, and you don't know where everybody is at. And so at that point, you can't call a church conference vote necessarily because you are not able to bring the DS in for a formal vote because you're not at that point. But what you're trying to understand is, where is everybody at? So we recommend a straw poll vote where churches can take a straw poll, and what it is, it's an informal vote to give the church council the understanding or knowledge of the best way to proceed forward for their church. And so a lot of times the straw poll or the confidence vote will basically inform the church council that the majority of the church, post town hall meeting or post meetings, that they have come to a conclusion that the majority of the church is wanting to pursue something to leave the United Methodist Church. And so then we get to our 4 options that we talked about earlier. And for every church, we recommend it starts with an inquiry under paragraph 2549. And so your council then will draft a letter to the district superintendent in your annual conference that says, our church has thought this through. We've had conversations about it. And the majority of our members, if not close to all of our members, or if it's just the majority of our members, are of one mind that our church can no longer be a part of the United Methodist Church. And here's the reasons. Every church's reasons look differently. And so listing out those reasons and then stating that you want to pursue an agreement to separate under paragraph 2549. And then once you send that into the district superintendent, you'll get varying different types of responses. We are glad to review that letter for you. A lot of our new members that are now working with us under paragraph 2549 sent us those letters. We reviewed them, gave them some ideas. We don't provide templates. The reason we don't provide templates is because a lot of times if there was a template document, a lot of people would think that the NCLL was out there trying to convince churches to disaffiliate, which is not the case, obviously. We're here to support what you want to do and what your church would like to do. And so as you guys think that through and draft that letter, we can do a review for you and provide you some edits. And then you can then take that letter, send it in the DS. Some of you will get responses back from the district superintendent that will say, yes, we'll be glad to help you with this process. I'll come to your church, I'll hold a meeting, and we'll go forward from there. We've already had quite a few churches in the last couple of weeks receive such responses from the DS. Some of you will receive responses that say, no, our conference isn't giving any options to leave in this manner, and that you have no options to leave in this manner. And again, some of our churches have received those responses. Regardless of the type of response that you get, that letter and subsequent response will let you and your church know where you are at in that process. And then based on that response, then you can evaluate either pursuing that option or one of the other options that we talked about. And so that's really where it starts. And so what we would recommend for any of you is to get your free consultation with the NCLL, if you would like it, to review these options very specific to your conference, your state, and your specific facts and situation. I'm going to put into the chat our information. And then what we recommend is that when you do contact us, we would like to have as many people in that meeting as possible from your counsel, because it's a lot easier to have that conversation with a group of people versus have it with one who then takes that message to the other couple of people, and then who tries to convey that back to the council. And then what happens, we end up with multiple meetings. And so what we recommend is doing a Zoom or Teams meeting. We get a group from the council together, majority of the council if possible, have the meeting, discuss the options, answer questions, and then the council then can be prepared on what to go forward. And then most likely we're going to recommend for you to draft that letter, that request to separate under paragraph 2549, after you have decided whether or not your church is wanting to pursue that. And so whether or not you've already had town halls or discernment opportunities, whether you have already discussed this at length with your church, or you still have yet to do that. We recommend, once the council knows that they're ready to pursue it, sending that letter of request to the district superintendent. So again, the scenario would look like, number one, you can get your free consultation with your council. Number two, make sure you know where your church is at, whether it's town halls and discernment meetings or conversations or the straw poll or a mixture of all of it. And once you're sure, then either we have another conversation or you draft that letter of request to the DS. That letter then goes out requesting an agreement to separate under paragraph 2549. Once you get that response back from the district superintendent or the conference, then your church can make an evaluation about where you're at, whether it's about the amount of money they're requesting from you, whether it's about the process, or if there's not a process and they're not allowing you to leave under paragraph 2549. All of those different options then can be assessed, and your church can make a determination forward on what you want to do. We recommend taking that paragraph 2549 process as far as you possibly can, and to the point where it doesn't make sense for you before you look at other options. Because you want to make sure that if you're taking an alternative route, you understood what the non-litigation pathway looked like for your church. So that's a kind of our advice as you kind of move forward. And again, that's broad and generic because there's a lot of different people listening to this at different conferences in different states. But broadly, those are the steps that we're advising people as they call in. Attorney David Gibbs III was called into court this morning on an issue, and it went well into the afternoon, so he was unable to join, and sends his apologies. We have worked significantly with a lot of the leadership of the WCA. We appreciate the Wesleyan Covenant Association and their work with all the churches that are across the country, trying to discern what's best for their church and how to ensure that their church thrives into the coming years. One of the things David says a lot is that the success of the gospel is not in the White House, it's not in the state house, but it is in the church house, and that we want to make sure that your church and the many churches that are proclaiming the gospel across the country can do so, because it is an important aspect of how our country was founded, and it is also how our country will continue to be blessed by God and continue to influence our culture. Thriving churches are vital to our society, and so our organization wants to help your church. We want to help you thrive as you move forward. If that means staying in the United Methodist Church, we still would love to be a part of helping you. We work with churches of all different types of denominations, organizations, beliefs. We specifically have assisted a lot of churches in the disaffiliation process, as a lot of them are looking to find that success for their church and thriving for their church outside of the United Methodist Church. But regardless of where you're at, if we can be of assistance to you, we want to, and see how God can use our organization, our ministry to help your church take those next steps to keep your church thriving in the coming months, years ahead. So our organization stands ready to help you. Our website is ncll.org. That is ncll.org. I just put that in the chat. Our number is 727-362-3700. You can give our office a call. And you can also send an email to info@ncll.org, info@ncll.org. And our organization would be thrilled to walk you through a complimentary analysis of your church's situation and exactly what your church is looking at as far as the facts, the situation, the conference, the process, the procedures, all the different elements of what you guys are looking to do and help you guys plot a path through that and walk alongside you as you go through that. If you do get into a paragraph 2549 process, the way that we work is that our organization charges $100 a month or $1,000 a year for a membership. For if you sign up for a year of membership, it's $1,000. We will assist you with your corporation, your EIN, your bylaws, helping you get all of your ducks in a row, assist you with the property transfer, whether that requires the release of trust or a transfer deed or a combination, and then help you dissolve the prior entity so that you go seamlessly through that process. And again, we did that process over 2,000 times across the different conferences. And so we've done quite a few of those in almost every state of the country. But if you do get into that process, we'll walk alongside of you and assist you in that process as part of our membership. The only cost that doesn't cover is the filing fees. If you do end up in litigation, you're looking for some assistance with that. That does come outside of the membership. Our members do get a discounted price as far as that goes, and we work with affiliate lawyers in every state. We have a lawyer either admitted in every state on our full-time staff or an affiliate lawyer who works with our organization as local counsel in every state. So we can assist with those matters as we're able to. But our organization looks to find ways for you to get out as quickly, as expeditiously as possible, and help you kind of figure out what those options are. So we would love to talk to you more, love to learn more about your specific situation, praying for all of you as God leads and directs each of you as you seek God's will for what these next steps look like for your church. These are difficult times. Right now, we're talking to several hundred churches a week. Our phones have been blowing up since the general conference changes, and a lot of people are very disappointed. Many churches that didn't go through disaffiliation felt like they were told that the general conference wouldn't change the book of discipline, that the book of discipline hadn't changed, and that now that it has changed and a lot of those ways to disaffiliate have been significantly either altered or completely foreclosed. They're disappointed, they're frustrated, and at the end of the day, we know God has a plan. So whether your church is feeling frustrated and anxious, we know that somehow, for some reason, somehow this is part of God's plan for your church. And now is your job as fiduciaries of your church, as individuals that God has given to steward the ministry of your church. Your job now is to discern the best way forward. And so I recommend not looking backwards, just looking forwards. It is what it is as of today. And now we have to see how God would lead you and your church forward and see how he will work in and through it. Because at the end of the day, all this is part of his plan. Whether your church is a United Methodist church or not is going to be based on whether he allows or helps you to do that. So rely on him, have his peace, and ask God for direction and guidance. And we will do our best to provide you good information, because we believe good information given to good people help them make good decisions. So we will do our best to help you do that. I appreciate the Wesleyan Covenant Association for having David and I. Again, my apologies for David not being able to come today. He sends his regards and his regrets for not being able to attend, but we look forward to the opportunity to speaking with many of you in the coming days and weeks. I appreciate it so much.
Mr. Bailie, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your effort and that calming and reassuring message that you've given people. I think they are in need of that. And you've given them a resource where they can come and follow up. And that's an amazing use of your hour for us. So we really appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
And would you also express for us to Mr. Gibbs, thank you in the same way.
Will do.
I really do want to just make a comment there that what you've done, and I've been watching this for several years now, what you've done has been amazing. And it's changing lives. And I thank you for that. Both of you. Thank you. And God bless.
Appreciate that.
And so if you're listening in, be sure that you follow up on the links or the advice he's giving you in terms of especially listening for God. We know that this can have a good ending for you, and don't be afraid to take a leap. Just don't be afraid to take a leap in the name of Christ. He will catch you every time. Thank you. God bless. And goodbye to all of you.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
See you.